So you did it. You made the jump. You got your iPad Pro. Oh yeah. You got yourself Procreate, and now you're sitting there like one of them kitty cats trying to play piano. All like, how did the gestures work? What's going on with this thing? Why is it that like when I stick things into like little groups in here on my stack, I can't pull them back out again? And how do stacks even work? Why do I even care? Yeah. So if that's you, you made the jump. You're in it. You're like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to draw for a living, whether you're a tattoo artist, a digital artist, you're here making t-shirts, whatever it is. That's what this video is about. I'm here to help. My name's Clay. I'm the Techie Tattooer. And I'm a tattoo artist professionally. I use Procreate every day. I live on this app. It's my life. So yeah, let's just get into it and let's get into, I don't know, some top 10 things that you're going to want to know to get your Procreate journey started. So as soon as you open Procreate, boink, the first thing you're going to be hit with is this menu here. And this is where all of your art is going to live. I personally don't use stacks. I probably should, because that would allow me to use, you know, like if I stuck these little guys together here, yoink, hey, no, get on there. There we go. Right, now I've got a little stack going on with this, and both of my Charizard designs are stuck together in one nice location, and that can be really handy. It's a super useful tool. It's just a way of keeping things organized, and if you do want to take things out of your stack, just grab it, drag it, hold it up to the stack and wait till it turns blue there, and then just put it wherever you want, and now these two are no longer a stack. It still says it's a stack, but it's not, right? Oh, come on out. There we go. And now it's no longer a stack, it's now untitled artwork because everything in that stack has been taken out of it. So that's just the basics there of the quote-unquote file system that Procreate has. So I like to start things off with the paper size. That's this one here. There's a bunch of different ones. As you can see, I've got all these untitled canvases because I don't name stuff very well or at all. If you're doing like t-shirt designs and that kind of thing, you know, you might want to be at like the 4,000 pixel by 4,000 pixel kind of thing, or maybe even higher resolutions than that. You know, I got a 4,000 by 6,000 pixel one down here. The thing to consider though is that the bigger your canvas is, the fewer layers you're going to be able to have, right? I think in this like 4,000 by 4,000 is 4,000 by 600. I can only get like 10 or 12 layers in there max, maybe even less than that. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to consider. I just have this paper setting at 11 by 8.5, and that's at 300 DPI dots per inch, so that way I get a nice medium high resolution image that will do everything I need it to do, because I am printing stencils out onto standard American size sheets of paper, and that to me is the most efficient way to draw. Yeah, that's just me specifically. If you want, you can hit that plus button there and actually create your own dimensions, whatever. You can use DPIs, you know, right? And it'll let you know, right, what your maximum layer count is there. So that's kind of cool. As you start sizing things up, this layer drop will drop, right? So if we go 6,000, right, it just dropped us down to 78. Then if we go 6,000 again, drop me, yeah, exactly. So I get like 10 or 12 layers on some of those guys there. Yeah, and so today we're actually just gonna go ahead and start from a standard paper size, because that is what I like to use. And yeah, so here we are in Midjourney, or here we are in Procreate, not Midjourney. I've been watching a lot of Midjourney tutorials, so you'll have to forgive me if I keep saying that kind of stuff. And this is the base menu that you're gonna have. I don't have any of my settings change. It's just default right-hand settings. Your little brush icon is going to be where all your brushes are going to live. It's also going to be, if you have any stamp packs, it's going to be where your stamp packs live as well. Boop, there you are. And that guy turned out green because green is the color that I have it set to right now. This is the specific color type or color wheel display that I like to use. But as you can see down at the bottom here, there are actually 5 options. The disc is also really handy. It's nice because if you want to, jump across your palette to kind of do, complementary colors and that sort of thing, can be super nice for that. I just personally like the classic, and then your color palette, is this slider here, right? Harmony is an interesting one because you can actually choose a color and then it will give you the other, I guess they're not complementary colors because complementary is the opposite of the color palette, but it gives you a 3-up to show you what else is going to look good with those color choices, right? If we go into this pastel here, it's now saying from this pastel green, you're going to want to use a nice purple and a nice pink. If we go to a nice bright yellow, gee, what a surprise, it pushes us over to cyan and this super, fuchsia pink color, because those 3 colors go great together. If you're into 80s art at all, you won't argue with this setup. It's what we do. There is also the value, and this is much more of what you'd expect to see in like a vector graphic program or something more like in Adobe Photoshop and that kind of thing. Those can be really, really nice because they spit out the hex code here. And depending on what kind of art you're doing, what kind of clients you have, it could be really nice to know what your hex codes are for the individual colors that you're using. Under palettes, they've got a bunch of pre-made palettes. If you guys would like, I can show these 2 palettes actually came from, as you can see, the Broken Puppet, Old School, and I imported these twice because I'm a goob. But you can see that there are other color palettes that you can bring in. You can create your own color palettes. It's actually really fun. It's a really cool way to store things if you like having your color palettes all ready to go, and then you can just select them down here. Next, you have your smudge tool. I don't use the smudge tool at all, but it's like the other tools where you click on it and it gives you a brush that you can use the smudge tool with. Since I'm already just on this airbrushing tool, you can see that, yep, it just smudges it, right? Do the 2-finger tap, and that's your undo. You also have undo and redo right here. So if we want to redo it, we can do a 3-finger tap, right? And that'll redo the last action. Or you can keep tapping forever, right? I mean, not forever, but there's a pretty darn big memory in this thing, and so it feels like forever. So 2 taps, or the double finger single tap, I can speak today, is what's going to be your undo. Redo is 3 taps, 3 fingers. And so that's the quick way to just get those gestures. You will get used to doing the double tap, the triple tap. It's super handy. I actually find myself doing it on paper all the time, where I'll be like, undo, undo. Oh, right, it's an analog. I can't undo in real life. So you will get used to that, and then start trying to make real life reflect your art, and it doesn't, even though they say real life reflects art. Anyway, so inking pens, or this inking category, I guess, is my favorite pen. I like the technical pen. I was drawing with the syrup pen for a really long time. It's a pressure sensitive pen that's really, really nice to use, but you can see the actual pen itself is kind of this weird triangular shape, right? And that ended up not really being my favorite shape for some of my edging. And so I've moved over to the technical pen because it is a circle. If you want to change, here, we'll go ahead and clean up our workspace right there by just double tapping the 2-finger tap. If you want to size up, this is your scroll wheel for sizing up your pen tool. Whatever you have selected, this is your maximum size here, your minimum size there. There are actual settings that you can have to click back and forth, but that'll be times for a more in-depth tutorial. This is your opacity slider, right? And notice how when these go over each other, because I'm at, whatever, 25% opacity, right? You can just keep drawing over that stuff. And then, now that we've drawn over this a few times, right, we're going to get up to, 100% opacity in a little bit there. I always keep it at 100% opacity. I do find that if I am using airbrushes, right, there are certain brushes that I will lower the opacity with, but generally speaking, that's just not a setting I really mess with at all. Over here, this is your layer erase, right. Erase has the same exact options. You can erase from any type of pen set. I always just kind of keep it on technical pen, but you're going to play around with that. If you're much more of a, where's my drawing stuff, right? If you like pencil style, right? That one doesn't, no, because it's not on the thing. Right, so if you're into drawing here, boop, on my little pine, right? If you like, your rougher textures, you can absolutely do that. And then in order to keep that roughness, you're going to want to stay on the same style of brush, so that way when you erase, you're not erasing a nice clean line into it like you would if you were in the technical pen and then you erased on it. Right, now you've got your technical pen style nice clean line going. Or maybe you do want that. Maybe that's what you're after, but yeah. So that third option there, that's your eraser option. The really cool thing about getting a 2nd gen iPad with the 2nd gen Apple Pen here, pencil, is that you can throw it everywhere, and it's really, really light, so it'll just jump clean out of your hand, really, really easy. No, the double tap. There's a little tool right here. There's a little sensor right there where you can double tap it, and it will flip back and forth between your eraser and your pen. Eraser, pen. So you're drawing, doing your thing, and then you're like, no, I'm actually going to come through, give it a little double tap, and erase this stuff out. Back to pen, double tap, back to eraser. And these are all default settings. I haven't messed with it at all, but you 100% can change all of those settings. Preferences, right? So I've got it on the right-hand interface. There's a light interface, which I think actually brings it up everything white. Yeah. Oh, gosh, that's gross. We don't use that. And that brings us to this 4th tab here, your Layers tab. You can name layers, right? You can rename it. You can copy layers from here. You can, just go ahead and clear the whole layer, boom, and you just undid everything you did there. Real quick alpha lock or mask. Inverting layers is actually kind of an interesting thing. It actually inverts the colors on them, right? So if I were to invert this, oh, I don't have anything there because it doesn't invert the background. Well, anyway, if I were to have something there, right, and I inverted the layer, it just pops it opposite the color palette wheel, right? So here, and then it popped it over to here, inverting the color. It can be really useful actually for some black and white layers if you're doing that kind of art. But for the most part, again, I don't really use those settings. I don't maximize my Procreate tool usage like I should. Really, the only thing I use in this selection here is the assistance tool for when I am doing my mirroring. And we'll go ahead and just jump right into that so you can see how that works. I'm going to just start a new layer here, and then I'm going to go over to my wrench thing. Canvas is the first one you've got there. And in the canvas, the drawing guide is what I'm talking about. It's a really nice guide. You turn it on, then you edit it. And from here, you can see we're starting out on a 2D grid. If I were to click Drawing Assist on, what that would do is every line that I did wouldn't actually snap to this specific line, but double tap, but it will, right, give me nice straight lines. It won't snap to, but it won't allow me to draw anything that isn't on the grid. And so that, if you're trying to do more technical style drawings, that can be super effective. It can be really, really helpful. There's an isometric grid for if you're trying to do those top-down 3/4 view. It's called the isometric view video games, you know, those builder games and that kind of stuff. So I don't ever use it. The perspective grid is also nice. You can choose 2 areas, right? And it will give you a really cool perspective so that you can just have nice guidelines for, you know, yeah, again, if you're doing more technical style drawings or some 80s stuff, whatever, right? Perspective grid, while I don't use it, very fun, super cool thing. And as you can see, because I clicked twice, I have 2 points going off into the distance. And what I use is symmetry. That's like pretty much the only thing I use this for. We're going to click on symmetry. There are options. You can go horizontal, vertical. You can go quadrants. Radial is really fun. Rotational symmetry, if you click this on, this is actually a cute little tool where instead of having things be Instead of having things be really symmetrical, clear this layer, it makes them rotationally symmetrical. Whoop! So that's kind of a fun tool. You may or may not want to ever use that. Right, so you go to symmetry, options. If we turn off rotational symmetry, what we get is this. Right? Non-rotational symmetry. If you're doing mandalas and that kind of thing, that can also be super useful, super handy. The only issue with this symmetry tool is unfortunately it only has in 8 sections. It only does 8 sections. It doesn't actually allow you to do like a 6 section or like a hexagonal style, which is actually more popular because of sacred geometry for mandala style tattoos. And so that is the only downside to this, is it's only an 8 quadrant symmetry tool when you're using radial. But anyway, if you go to vertical, you have to have Drawing Assist on for it to work. If you click Drawing Assist off, this is just a line that shows up on your layer and doesn't do anything. So you have to click Drawing Assist on, done and done. We'll clear this layer one last time. And now you've got your symmetry doing its thing, right? And that's a really handy tool. I use symmetry all the time. Back to here, now that I have rotational symmetry on, or symmetry on, you'll actually see there's this Drawing Assist option that was not there before. And this Drawing Assist option is one of the things I will use, because if you make a new layer, right, by adding new layers with the plus symbol, you'll see that none of them have assisted on. And that means that even though I can see this line because it exists in this layer here, it's not actually on for these layers, right? To turn that on, you click there in the little pane. Actually, you can click anywhere on the blue. And then you click Drawing Assist on. Now it says Assisted, and now I've got my Drawing Assist on, right? Assisted, and now Drawing Assist will be on. You'll notice when I did all those undos, it actually erased my layers and everything. So you're going to have to be really careful with your undo clicking with your double tap, because you can undo all kinds of stuff, all kinds of actions that you have done in the layering pane, in the tool selection pane, all kinds of stuff. And so that is, undoing is a little bit dangerous, but you'll get used to it. That's just going to be something you're going to have to play with. In the layering panel, you've got the option to swipe here. If you swipe right on something, that will grab multiple layers. So let's say you've got a little purple dot over here, right? And you want to grab both this little helix and the purple dot. You just swipe right on the layer. Now both of them are selected. We go over to our selection tool, and now we can move both of them in their relationship to each other. And that's also another thing that I use all the time to just grab layers, resize things a lot, right? Resize it, go stick it up over here, do a bunch of them on a piece of paper so that I can have different sizes for a client of their design. So that's super handy. You can also left swipe your layer, and that brings up this selection tool here. You can lock it in place, which means it won't move around. You can duplicate a layer, which is super, super handy, or you can just delete the whole thing, right? So left swipe, duplicate, and now I got two of those little guys. Boop, boop. Super handy, right? So left swipe, duplicate, that's how I duplicate things. But the really cool part is you don't have to duplicate that way. You can duplicate this way. Grab your selection tool. Now that it's selected, you have all these options here, and we'll talk about a few of those options in just a sec. But with this guy selected and these little blue dots up, you can 3-swipe down, right? So you drag like a kitty cat scratching with 3 fingers, and that'll open up your copy and paste window. I actually do a lot of duplicating here because, well, you know what? I'll just show you. But you can duplicate, you can cut and paste, which will actually cut the shape out of the layer and paste it to a new layer. You can copy it and then paste it later, right, with this paste tool. But why not just duplicate it or cut and paste it? So let's say we've got, you know what? I'll just be uber lazy. Oh, right. In here, you've also got the check marks. These check marks are just visibility. You can take all of these layers out, make them invisible by just turning them off and on with this check mark. Super, super handy to be able to do, just because, you know, let's say you drew a flower and you don't really like it, but you're not sure you want to erase it yet. So just kind of give it one of these and see if you like it with, without. Really handy tool. But we're just going to go up here to like a floral pack, and I'm going to grab a flower here, a rose, why not? I'm going to size it up a bit. Boop. So I've got this rose here, and I actually want to mess around with this or get rid of this set of leaves. You go to this selection tool, and this is your grab stuff tool, right? Your magic grabber. You've got your automatic setting on here, which is where you click and then it uses the boundaries to decide what it's grabbing, and you can grab multiple things at once. I'll actually use this a lot of times for doing fills and that kind of thing, but we'll get to that in a second. Freehand is why we're here. You click on this, make sure you're on freehand, and then we can grab a freehand grab of this guy. Go to our other selection tool. I don't really know what that one's called. Swipe down, and now we can cut and paste this little section alone onto its own new layer. And now we can get rid of it and bring it back and get rid of it and bring it back. We can edit it. We can change its color. We can do whatever we want with it. But that's actually what I use this little 3 swipe down menu for most of the time, is cutting something with my lasso tool, right? It's not called a lasso tool, it's called freehand, but you'll probably know it as the lasso tool. And yeah, it's super, super handy. You can use automatic, like if I wanted to grab, oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Like if I wanted to grab this whole thing, automatic, boop, and then it'll grab this whole shape because I clicked outside the shape, and this is what's on the layer, right? And now I've got this whole shape grabbed. Super, super handy for like, for instance, I grab the entire thing. This is what's being grabbed now. Notice how this blue area is what's selected. It's not the actual rows itself. It's everything outside of the rows, and it's used these lines as a boundary. You can invert, and it'll actually grab the rows. So now if I were to draw, this would be the border of the things I am allowed to draw, and it would stop me from drawing outside of this. Invert it again, and now we've got the background selected. That can actually be super handy if you want to make some shading on your tattoo. We're going to go down to airbrushing, and we'll click a soft brush, and we'll click, I don't know, we'll do a red because that'll show, or an orange because that'll show up good against that. And then now we're drawing in the background of that element. Notice how this, because it's on another layer, is not affected by the selection. And yeah, that's the first part. Automatic and freehand, your lasso and your auto selection tool. Rectangle and ellipse are exactly what they sound like, where you can just drag a rectangle and select something, or drag an ellipse and select something. Notice how it actually selected 2 elements there, right? So if I were to, we'll go ahead and start a new layer. Notice how this stays selected. I'll grab a new color, just a disgusting green. Drag from my color selector, hold it. Oh, don't hold it, right. Because that, if you hold it, it'll actually pick the last color that you selected. I always forget that. I mess that up all the time. Just drag it over, and now notice that the 2 selections I made are not interacting with each other, but you can make multiple selections like that, right? You could just keep selecting and keep selecting and keep selecting, and that works as well, right? That's just something you can choose to do. We'll go ahead and delete that layer. We'll go ahead and delete this layer. And then to get rid of our selection, you just click on this selector tool, little magic selector, and those are those 4 basic options. I use invert a lot, but that's pretty much what I do, is I just grab, maybe I'll do some inverting, and then if I want to copy and paste and do those other things, I go back to here, I swipe down, and I copy and paste from this window, whatever, selection tool. But there's a million different ways to skin a cat in Midjourney, or Procreate. I told you I'd do that again. And yeah, that's just one of them. Speaking of our little color picker here, well, not color picker, our color selector, one of the things I like to do, and is a good gesture, is you can actually use your finger. Whoops. And if you hold it down, this is now a color picker. And yep, I've now picked the purple. Now watch. Boop. See that? That purple from this rose is now my selected color. Now when I draw, I'm drawing in that exact same purple. So I use my finger to drag around and do color picking all the time. That's what I personally do because it's just so fast. But there's actually a color picker right here. That's what this square is. See how that same exact selector came up? And then you can drag it around with your pen if you're more of a pen style person, or if you wear one of those little gloves, right? But this is your color picker, this little square right here. Yep, there it is, right? And you can pick one of the more shaded areas or whatever you want to do. But which is dangerous sometimes, as you can see, because I just drew, I use my finger. Hold it down, drag it around, and then wherever you let go, that's the color you're selecting. Yep, there we go. And now I'm on this light one. So that's how I use the color picker. Let's see, what else can I show you folks? We'll get rid of that. Oh, yeah, this N. This is the normal layer type. You can do all kinds of really cool stuff with this, right? Yeah, these are masks. These are layering masks. And I do not mess around with layering masks nearly as much as I should. There are really cool things you can do with it, especially with the overlay tool. Yeah, let me know in another in a comment or whatever if you want me to get into this. I'll have to do a little bit of practicing with my layer masks because I'm really bad about using them. But you can absolutely use layer mask to do really, really fun stuff. And if you get more and more into actually creating digital art, you will be using your layering masks all the time. They're amazing. Let's go ahead and get rid of that layer. And we're going to put down another little basic shape. We'll go ahead and put down a little samurai. Boop. Yeah, I don't want him black. And I want to get back to my settings so that I know what I'm doing. Pow. There we are, a fun little black samurai. So we have gone over these 4 tools and our color selection ability. This is your regular selector. And you know what? We'll go ahead and just go from here. I don't use reset, bicubic, fit to canvas, right? Fit to canvas is just stretching it out so it fits to canvas. I don't use these tools really at all. Rotate 45 degrees, I will use, right? I will absolutely use my flip vertical and flip horizontal. Those are super handy. Be careful with that though, because if you're doing text, you can't be horizontal flipping your text. We don't want to be writing backwards on people. So that's a whole nother can of worms. These 3 or 4 options up here, I absolutely do use though. The uniform is 99% of the time what I stay on, because when you size it by grabbing a blue dot, it stays uniform, right? The width and height do not get moved. If you go to freeform, all bets are off and you can freeform squish that sucker however you want. Distort is a cool thing. You can kind of tell by the icon what it does. It'll grab an individual pixel or a point and allow you to stretch it from that point. This is actually really handy if you want to make something, right, have some perspective or make it look like it's fitting on a screen. Say if you're creating thumbnails for your YouTube videos and you want to make it look like this image is on your iPad and your iPad is at some weird angle to the screen, right, from your camera that you're shooting from. So this can absolutely be really handy if you're making, you know, billboards in your drawings and that kind of stuff, and you've got your piece all done, and then you just need to add a little bit of perspective to it. Distort is a great tool for that. The other tool, the final one in this selection option dealy-majig, is warp. And this grid shows you how you're going to warp. And warp is fun because you don't have to use it from the edges here. But notice how I'm folding it like a piece of paper. I don't actually use it from these node points. I'll actually grab and warp like that. It can be super handy for doing text, but you got to watch out because notice how when you grab it from the middle, you can squish it around all weird and really mess your image up. So the guidelines become really, really important. And you can grab kind of from the guideline here and squish it up close to the guideline there, squish it up. And I will oftentimes do that when I am making text wrap around and that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of different uses for this. I don't use it that much because it really, depending on where you grab from, it can really skew your image in weird ways. So you're going to want to be careful with that. But that's freeform, uniform, distort, and warp. We did go over every setting that I use in the lasso or selection tool. And so that brings us to the magic tool. This is fun. These are the only four that I use. Actually, that's not true. I use these two. I use hue, saturation, and brightness, and curves. That's it. That's all I use. I don't put Gaussian blurs and motion blurs, perspective blurs on my stuff. You can add noise, sharpen, bloom, glitch, halftones, chromatic aberration. I don't even know what these do, right? So if you want me to do tutorials on how these things work, let me know and I will, I'll do my due diligence and start figuring out all this stuff for you guys. But what I use as a tattoo artist is curves and hue, saturation, and brightness. So let's say we've got this guy and we're just I'm gonna be bad. I'm gonna be really bad. I'm gonna distort, or rather destroy my line work. It's so bad. Do I do it? Do I destroy my line work by just dragging onto it and giving him colors? You know what? I'm gonna teach you let's not do this. We're going to do something that I do all the time, and I'm just going to teach you my specific workflow. So dragging directly onto the image is tempting because, man, that fill tool is so fun. But we're not going to do that because we, as tattoo artists, want to keep our line work super clean. And basically, as digital artists in general, let's keep your line work clean. So what I do is I create a new layer. You can hold this guy down actually and then drag him around wherever you want. Hold it down, it'll pick him up, and then drag it around wherever you want it. I'm going to stick him at the top and make sure my line work is always at the top. That's how I do my workflow. Then I'm going to turn my line work into the reference layer. I've done other tutorials on drawing where I've showed how this reference layer works, but this is its own tutorial, and so we're going to go for this. So now, this layer is the master layer, right? So I can go onto a new layer that's not technically related to this reference layer. And now when I drag in my color, boop, it's going to treat it like it's drawing, or rather like it is using this layer to inform where the boundaries are. And that can be super, super handy. Like let's say you go over here and you got your automatic tool on, and then we grab this. We'll grab those, right? And yep, we'll go to a new layer here. I'll pick a black. We'll pick a airbrush. We'll go smaller on this airbrush. And now I can draw in shading on this guy. Right? Super handy way. So this is what I use the reference selector option for in my layers, right? Reference, or rather this is the reference layer, but right, I use this all the time for doing this specific thing where I add shading and that kind of stuff to a design, right? You can grab this, boom, right? And then now that becomes the edge work. Pow, right? Super, super useful. That's how I use it. If you don't like these little white lines, they are actually a byproduct of the fact that there is a little gradient or softness on this line here, and it's not pushing all the way through because it's using this black as the barrier, and it has a percentage change that it will accept in the automatic selection tool. And if you want to change that percentage, you go here to your automatic selection tool, and you can draw up and down on the top of the screen here, and it changes your threshold. If you have it all the way up at 100%, it says that there is 100% change in color tone that it will select. And you don't want to go that high, go up to like 80 something percent, right? And now, when I select inside here, watch, this black line's going to go away, see? Notice also how it draws within this thing because it said, no, this line isn't big enough. I'm going to jump my selection all the way into here. So you do have to be careful with that, but that's what it'll do. It'll take the percentage of change between two colors, and you can tell it, I want to have 0 threshold. So, right at 8.9% now, right? 14, 12, 10% roughly, I will accept a 10% change in my selection. Every change greater than 10%, I'm going to cut off the border there. And that's what you're telling it to do. Yeah, so that's only an option for the automatic selector. Otherwise, if you're just doing freehand, you got to actually draw your own lines and not mess it up. So freehand is super, super handy, or automatic is super, super handy, and you can spit everywhere as always. But yeah, that. Draw left and right at the top of the screen, and that is how you can change your automatic selection settings. But that is me getting distracted from hue, saturation, and brightness, and curves. Hue, saturation, and brightness brings up these 3 settings. Super duper handy, but they only apply to the current layer you have selected. So we're going to select our blue layer, do this over again because I'm a goob, and now we can slide along the color wheel. Oh my gosh, it's so useful. I love doing this. Right? So now we've changed his pants to a nice distressed blue. I love this color blue. We can also bring up the brightness, bring down the saturation so it's now grayscale. And I'll show you how come that's useful in a second here. And also we can bring up the brightness for real on the blacks and bring it down all the way that way, right? So this is, saturation and actual brightness. So why is this super useful? I will show you why it's super useful. We're going to go to this image here. And you know what? Nope. I'm going to select it, grab this image, or rather this workspace, duplicate it, so that way I don't mess up what I'm doing. And I'm going to take everything that is color. You get out of the way. Everything that is color, and smush it down. Actually, you know what? Now I'm just going to smush the whole image down. Forget it. Smushing the whole image down. Boom. I got one layer here, right? You know what we're going to do? We're going to go back over to this. We're going to pick hue, saturation, and brightness. And we're going to take the saturation all the way down to a 0. And now we have a black and white image from a color image. Super, super handy for taking color images and messing with them, seeing how your grayscale works. It's actually a really handy tool to see what your value map is like on a specific drawing. And if you have dark enough values, right? Or if you're using color alone to be your differentiator. Also, if you have a reference that has colors in it and your client wants it to be purely black and gray, you can smash the saturation down and then play with the brightness and figure out where you want it to be on that scale, right? Like that's nice right there. And so I will use hue, saturation, and brightness all the time. I love it. It's a really, really handy tool. The other thing you can now do is use curves effectively. It is most effective on black and white images. Actually, let's go, yeah. Boop, curves. I know this seems weird. You can use it on the red, green, and blue, but that just gets a little too technical. What you're looking at is a graph of black to white, right? You can kind of see it as a slider from your darkest 0 all the way up to white 255. And you can grab this guy and mess with it. So notice you create more white in the drawing. You can make it lighter. By bringing it down, you make the drawing darker. But why this is important is because you can actually create frequencies where you can have this part be really, really bright, and then you can make the darks really, really dark. And so you can actually mess around and really bring up the contrast of your art. And now, as you can see, we have way more contrast on this piece, back, right? There's our color version. There's our plain version that doesn't have a lot of contrast. And now we've got even more contrast in there that we've pushed in based on using our curves tool. And that's a super, super handy way to take a photo reference, which I'll just go ahead and bring a photo reference in. Why not? Let's play around with this. You know what? Forget that. Slash imagine black and white photo of a tiger's face. Perfect. Somebody likes furries. I don't know who likes furries, but that's hilarious. I love this image. It makes me happy. But we're not going to use that image. We're actually going to use this really rad Japanese style one. So, yeah, click on it. And then where's my save button here? Is it here? Yep, save. Boop. Go to the little wrench. We're going to add. You can insert a file or insert a photo. I have everything under photos. Insert a photo. Boop. Dash my photo. Right? And now we're going to use our selection tool. Rectangle. Grab just this cool little guy there. We're going to swipe down. We're going to cut and paste him. And then we're going to get rid of that. So now, size him up. Now we have our fun little black and white image that we're actually going to use curves with. So let's say you have just been super, super lazy and boom, you're going to tattoo this on a client. But as you're printing it out, it just is way too dark. And it's got this dark background on it that is like messing with your life and the printer's trying to draw this whole, right? You know how that goes if you're trying to do tattoo art or trying to print things off. You don't want all that gray in there. So we're going to go to our curves. We're going to go, you get bright white. There we go. Yep. Much brighter white. And then we're even going to curve it a little bit. We're going to take some of that out. We're going to bring this whole black. Nope, I can't get rid of it. Nope, I'm losing detail level. There we go. There we go, right? And so you can see if I undo, much darker, much brighter, and you can see a lot more of the detail work in this piece now. So yeah, right, that's the two I use. I use hue, saturation, and brightness, and curves. You can color balance things in gradient map and, use Gaussian blur, right? Gaussian blur is just literally blurring your image, right? It can be great for background images and stuff like that. That's like literally what it did, just a 22% blur on the whole thing. So I don't use that kind of stuff because that's just not useful to me. I'd have to be doing much more like digital paintings to use a lot of these other tools. Motion blur is kind of fun because then it right, you're like, woo, I'm drunk. Wah. So you can see how some of these could be super useful, but only in highly specific scenarios when you're doing background elements and that kind of stuff. So that's your adjustments. Let me know again if you want me to dig deeper into that. Otherwise, we're going to call it good there. And finally, that brings us over to our actions or wrench selection here. Add is what you're going to mostly use is just, inserting a photo or inserting a file for your reference to either trace on top of or, shove off to the side and draw around. Super, super handy. Canvas is where you're going to find your drawing guide, right? I don't use Animation Assist or Page Assist, but if you were to make animations, there is some stuff you can do in there where it's about the layering system and blah, blah, blah. It's interesting. I don't do it. I don't bother with it. Share is absolutely super, super handy. You're going to be using this all the time because share is how you either save it as like a JPEG or a PNG, right? And that will actually save it to your hard drive on your device, or it's actually also how you print it. Because once you click on a file type, right, I'm on JPEG there, I can send it to a friend on an app, right? Or I can save the image directly onto my little hard drive, or I can print it. And that's where you're going to have, your most handy stuff there. Obviously, you could see how it's trying to print my little brown background because it's black and white. And, we're not going to actually print this. We don't want to make that happen. But yeah, your printer will show up here if it's connected on the same network. Notice how at the shop, I only have my one brother printer, but this is where all the different printable devices would show up. You can have presets and whatnot. Paper size is just letter. You can select multiple copies, etc., etc. But we're just going to go ahead and cancel that. But that's your share option. That's how you're going to share it to your friends. That's how you're going to save it to your hard drive. And then video. Video is super fun. If you don't have time-lapse recording on, it won't have a replay for you. So you have to keep this selection on if you want it to have a time-lapse video available. So we're just going to replay the time-lapse, right? I export time-lapses and edit them in, not Canva, what's the one that TikTok owns that's going to get banned here? CapCut, right? So I will export my time-lapse video all the time. You've got the option for full length or 30 second. I always go with full length. It's never that long. It's always a super, super fast time lapse, right? So full length is only ever like a minute or two at best. But we're just going to replay it so you can see what this has, right? Because I duplicated my last drawing, right? And this is not coming from a fresh canvas. It's got my previous steps for drawing my last thing. And notice how fast this is going, right? We're only at 15 seconds here and we're 3/4 of the way through it at, right? And then now for the last split second, you're going to see the tiger stuff. Boop. Yep, that fast, right? So that's your time-lapse video option. It's actually really, really handy if you want to start recording your own YouTube videos and that kind of stuff. But other than that, it's really not that useful. I showed you where your preferences were before. That's how you can choose it to left hand, right hand mode, that kind of stuff. There are advanced cursor settings. That's where you can change this kind of stuff around and all that stuff, but I wouldn't recommend messing with it. The defaults are awesome. If you want me to do a tutorial on how to change some of those default settings, do let me know. But that's everything, guys. That's us. We're good to go there. Yeah, that's probably our basic Procreate tutorial. I think I've probably gone over enough stuff that you guys have your own questions and concerns. Please let me know in the comments what else you want to know about, because I'm sure this video has gotten way too long. And yeah, I'm here for it, folks. Let me know what I can do to help. Thank you for watching. Do like the video, please. It really helps out the channel. Obviously, if you're already subscribed, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you're not, please do subscribe. Again, it really helps the channel. And your comments are amazing. I love talking with you folks. And this video suggestion was from a viewer. So you guys are helping me out. I love it. So I'm here to help you out. See you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.